A Better Route Chapter 96. Yugo couldn't remember the last time he'd had this much fun. This Naruto guy was actually won his level, hell he was on a level that was higher than his. For the first time in ages, Yugo was going all out in a fight and was still having trouble. He was finding that his brute strength, destroy everything in your path method of battle he usually used wasn't working on Naruto. Still, he wasn't giving up that easily. Ramping up the power as much as could, he put all of his chakra into his arms and used his arm thruster to launch himself into the air, way above Naruto's head. He clenched his fist together as he fell back to the earth, intending to bash Naruto over the head. Looking at the impending doom coming his way, Naruto decided it was time to take care of Yugo. He really didn't need to do it just yet, but he'd been wanting to test out his new powers anyways. Yugo could feel him activate Sage Mode from where he was at, although he had no idea what it was. When Yugo was almost about to land, Naruto closed his eyes and began to sense the world around him. Right before Yugo hit him, Naruto made a split-second movement and appeared right above Yugo, giving him a toad slap right in his back and slamming him into the ground and making a massive crater. When Naruto was expecting him to be out cold, he was still somewhat conscious. While he could barely move, he was able to rasp out, "That was the best fight I've ever had." After that he closed his and drifted away. He wasn't dead, just out cold. Naruto had won his fight relative ease and he was certain his friends would as well. Kidamaru had his full curse mark activated as Kabuto hid in the trees, waiting for the perfect moment to come down and kill the mad spider. He had created a bow from his silk, the hard style to make the arch and his sticking silk to make the string. Opening his mouth, Kidamaru spit out an arrow with a special head that let him get through everything. Listening carefully for everything and anything, Kidamaru got his bow ready to strike at a moment's notice. He was standing perfectly still and the forest was dead quiet. Every muscle in his body was just itching to move and get the hell out of here. However, he knew that if he did, Kabuto would take him out in a second. The sound of some sleeves rustling was heard a few feet from Kidamaru, and in a flash he turned in the direction the noise had come from, letting it fly. A body fell from the trees and Kidamaru had thought he'd won. He jumped down to admire his work only to find he had no idea who this person was. In fact, the body he'd shot was ice cold, like it had dead for hours. That's when it hit him, Kabuto's dead soul jutsu. The one he used to control dead bodies, damn it. Kidamaru pulled his bow back and turned around just in time to hit another one of Kabuto's corpses coming after him. Too bad for him, those two had been nothing more than a distraction. Kabuto had been preparing the kill shot the whole time Kidamaru had been preoccupied. In the middle of the shooting the corpse, he could hear that someone had hit the ground. Kidamaru began to turn, but it was too late. Kabuto was already upon him with his chakra scalpel to his neck. He didn't even have time to try and make some of his silk armor for himself. The last word he heard was Kabuto saying, "The itsy bitsy spider should have escaped when he had the chance." Kabuto slit his throat and Kidamaru's blood began to spill out along with his curse mark fading. Taking a deep breath, Kabuto said to himself, "That's one down, now I need Sai to get to those damn scrolls back." The two swordsmen were still giving each other hell, only now Sasuke was pissed and beyond ready to vent all of his frustration onto Suigetsu. Of course Suigetsu had been certain that he'd beat Sasuke simply because of his bloodline, but he soon found just how bad of an idea it was to underestimate the Uchiha. Sasuke had figured something out about Suigetsu's water transformation. Suigetsu could only use his water transformation for short amounts of time before he had to switch back because it took up too much of his chakra to use it for extended periods. It was already abundantly clear that Suigetsu didn't stand a chance without his bloodline, so all Sasuke really had to do was outlast him. Sasuke was angry but knew he had to keep a cool head if he was going to win this fight. However, it would be very beneficial if Suigetsu were to lose his. That's when Sasuke got an idea. "So Suigetsu, I'm gonna guess the real reason you hated Karen is because So wouldn't go for a guy like you, huh? Doesn't surprise me, you really don't look like her type." Too spazzy and kind of creepy. Suigetsu started to growl, "Shut the hell up. That little bitch should have been begging on her knees for me. It's not my fault she prefers assholes like you." Sasuke was glad to see he'd struck a nerve. "Something tells me it wasn't just Karen that shot you down. You don't look like too much of a ladies' man. To be honest, it looks like you scare them away." Suigetsu's eye started to twitch and he charged at Sasuke. "Stop talking." Suigetsu swung hard at Sasuke, but his sword didn't hit anything, going right through Sasuke, and hit tree, getting stuck in the process. That's when Sasuke jumped down from his tree and kicked Suigetsu in the face. Suigetsu tried to figure out what in the hell happened. It was genjutsu, wasn't it? "I can't believe I was that stupid." Sasuke shrugged. "I can believe it. You don't seem like the brightest person around here." Suigetsu was getting angrier and angrier by the second. "I told you to shut the hell up." He turned into his liquid form and began to use his power to grow his arms to a massive size. Sasuke had to admit, he hadn't been expecting that. This time when he swung at Sasuke, the boy dodged, but when it got to the tree it cut straight through it. Sasuke could see his power level had jumped up a lot, so he needed to end the fight now. He had something in mind, luckily, and he was pretty sure it worked. Using as much speed as he could, he ran up to Suigetsu so that was right under his chest. Suigetsu raised up his blade to cut Sasuke, but before he could, Sasuke shoved Tashu into his chest. It do any damage since he was completely water right now. Suigetsu smirked. "And you say I'm stupid? You're finished." Sasuke hadn't let go of the hilt of the blade. "You wanna bet?" He surged electricity through the blade and into Suigetsu's body. Suigetsu's liquid body didn't do him any good this time. In fact, it actually made an easier path for the lighting to travel though and increased his pain. Sasuke wasn't finished either. Making some hand seals while Suigetsu was hobbled over in pain, Sasuke threw some shuriken and put his hand to his mouth, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Suigetsu was caught right into middle of the explosion and the flames inside burned hot enough to expirate much of the water Suigetsu had in his body. He passed out and Sasuke walked over just to make sure that he was out for sure. After he kicked his body gently a couple times, Sasuke decided he was done and got ready to find some kind of way to contain him with his whole water transforming thing. Sakon and Yukon were soon finding out that two didn't always beat one. They'd activated the final level of their curse seal but still didn't seem to be getting anywhere with Mito. She'd actually torn the two of them apart with her bare hands and forced the two to spurt. Their taijutsu was having no effect on her, and to say they had limited ninjutsu would be an understatement. Still, they did have one thing they could still try. "Yukon, this isn't a fight we're going to win. It's time for us to get out of here. You know what to do." Yukon ran next to his brother and they slammed their hands into the ground. Mito had been expecting some kind of summoning animal, but what she got was a giant metal door in way. It didn't really matter to Mito, but it was she didn't want to take the time to run around. Much like Naruto, she knew it wasn't necessary, but she wanted to try out her new powers. She activated her Sage mode and her skin turned white with blue tattoo marks like it did before. She took a deep breath, spit acid from her mouth, great acid river. The door melted in seconds and Mito could see Sakon and Yukon's jaws drop. Mito used the speed her Sage mode gave her, which combined with her new Gukken style had her next to the two in a second. She grabbed both of their heads and slammed they together, cracking their skulls. Sakon and Yukon died instantly and Mito deactivated her Sage mode. It amazed her that this was only a fraction of what Sage mode could do. She'd have to see what it could really do one day. As the battle was raging on between Kimimaro and Kakashi, things were going in Kakashi's favor as he was facing against the leader of the Sound Five and was easily able to counter against his opponent's attacks with ease and able to keep him on the defensive. As for Kimimaro, things weren't going exactly his way. In fact, ever since he started his all-out brawl with Kakashi, he couldn't but kept thinking to himself how much potential this boy had. After fighting Kakashi for a certain amount of time, he found that he was such a skilled taijutsu user in terms of snake style, that he surpassed his master. He actually surpassed Lord Orochimaru, the great snake Sannin. To see that in his lifetime was something he thought would have been unheard of and secretly earned the bone user's respect. Yet because this boy, who stood against everything his master and him stood, was his enemy, he was very able to quickly dismiss these thoughts. Still, with all the skill the boy, this fool, had, he couldn't understand how he was someone not to be trifled with. How? How can a fool like you even be so skilled in snake-style fighting? Lord Orochimaru, who was a legendary Sannin, was never able to reach such an impending talent as yours. Yet, when I take a look at you, you're nothing compared to him. You don't deserve this power. So tell me, how is someone like you able to surpass the ability of Lord Orochimaru's caliber? How? Kakashi could see how much killing intent this guy was releasing just by how infuriated he was, but he knew that no matter what he said to him, he wasn't going to understand. The only thing he could do to reply to the bone user was calmly let Asai go, but still keeping his guard up with a kunai in his right hand in case of any sudden attack, and said, I'm able to use the snake's fighting style so well because they trust me, they trust so much that they would even depend their lives upon me. They want their reputation to be redeemed from the way Orochimaru trashed their name, and when I was able to become a snake sage for them, I was able to triumph over the disgrace they had been ashamed from for years. Besides, the snake sage elder trusts and speaks of me so highly for my accomplishment that he considers me a success over that crazy snake loony. If Kimimaro wasn't pissed before, you could be sure as hell he was now. From what Kakashi told him, there was absolutely no way he could believe that crap he was spewing about his former master. So he screamed, he didn't ruin their reputation, he let them shine to their glory. They should have been honored to have someone like him as their summon. Cough cough. Kakashi was startled at how much of an ill condition this guy was in as he saw oozing from his mouth despite the fact that it was covered by his left hand. While he was his enemy, he couldn't help but feel sorry for this guy. He devoted so much of life for benefit of one man, or rather a power-hungry fool to gamble everything had only to lose all he gained. Still, if there was one thing he learned during his time away from home, it was give others a second chance, and even if he couldn't save him and prolong his lifespan, no one should leave this world before passing on to the next one without knowing a little kindness. Kakashi let his guard up a little and started to say, looks like you won't be able to last much longer. Why don't you come back to the Hidden Leaf with us and let them take a look at you? I'm sure they could help your condition a great amount. Kimimaro was insulted by those words and cut him off, "No. I will never work with you mongrels, especially since you killed Lord Orochimaru. I'm going to kill you all." With those words he was done talking and saw in wasting no time in activating the final level of his curse mark, preparing to slaughter the Uchiha. Kakashi watched as his body started a metamorphosis-like state by a purple-gray coloring started to spread all over his body from head to toe until every amount of skin Kimimaro had was a darker shade than usual. What Kimimaro did next made Kakashi slightly sick to stomach, but made it look as though there was no reaction. He actually pulled his own spine out of his body. Oh dude, that is just sick. From the amount of killing intent and the power increase of malicious chakra emanating from his opponent, Kakashi shifted back into his fighting style and raising his kunai. Kimimaro began to swing it around for some time to get the feeling of how much motion should be used on it before using as the purpose of a whip, swinging and lashing it at Kakashi in quick X-like motions. Every time Kimimaro struck with his bone-like whip, he barely had time to evade. He was going to have to be nimble even more now at how his opponent altered his fighting style. This is the power Lord Orochimaru gave me. It may be the end of me, but I'll make sure that it will be it's going to be your end too. If I'm gonna go down fighting, I'm taking you with me to the afterlife. At this point, Kakashi that it was time to unleash a little more extent of his own power and decided to call upon the power of his other bloodline to defend himself this time. He slowly built his chakra up to the point where he could release it. He slammed his hands together creating a large wooden pillar rose up in the process catching the spine whip and catching the bone user off guard for a split second as roots began arising from the ground forcing him almost back into a corner. To think that this brat could also use the lost bloodline of the first Hokage, would release. There was time when he heard from Orochimaru about the time he was in the Hidden Leaf experimenting with the first Kekai Genkai, but based off of what he guessed this boy's age was, it was impossible because by that time he had already deserted the leaf. So what was the reason now for Kakashi to be able to utilize the lost power? That didn't matter to him right now. Right now the only thing Kimimaro was concerned about was ending the fight, for this next attack would be his last. Kimimaro concentrated to build an incredible amount for his most powerful attack, Great Bone Forest. Soon a small rumble occurred beneath Kakashi's feet and caught slight off balance, cancelling out the earlier attack. He didn't know what the hell that was, but he figured that whatever it wasn't going to be good and on a very powerful scale by the small earthquakes he was sensing. If he was going to be prepared for the next strike, he wanted to be in his strongest form when it hit. Kakashi closed eyes and let himself focus the energy around him to channel it within his system just like it was in his training. Scales started to grow on his body, ignoring everything that was going on around him despite there being an immediate power surge from bones growing from the ground and rushing at Kakashi. The bones began erupting from the ground to grow to an incredible height. His sage mode just made it barely in time as a bone quickly shot up from directly he was standing. All around him, an endless amount of bones were continuing to give a barrage of attacks as they were erupting from the ground, forcing him suddenly on the defensive and was scanning for an opening as he was dodging them as fast as he could. Even with the speed and flexibility that Sage Mode increased his physical capabilities further gave him, it was incredibly difficult. He was staring to run out of options on what to do next. Luckily, just as a down was going to arise from underneath him, he got a good idea and smirked. He changed his hand into a snake and wrapped it around one of the already erupted bones, retracted it to lift himself above the rest of them. Kakashi looked over and saw Kimimaro shaking hard and in a coughing fit. His justo was going at a slower pace as his body started to give out. Kimimaro gasped out his final words, "Did I please you, Lord Orochimaru?" Kimimaro's disease finally got the better of him and he collapsed facing forward onto the ground. It pained Kakashi to see someone with that much potential and willpower die in such a manner, but he knew that he died in an honorable way, staying true to his convictions. He died for his master and for himself. There was no greater honor. That much, Kakashi could at least respect. See you.